Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel, where today we are going to do a full-length, non-spoilery review of Across the Green Grass Fields by Seanan McGuire, the sixth book in the Wayward Children series. So the Wayward Children series is an adult portal fantasy series of novellas, and we are following the kids at Eleanor West's home for wayward children. Essentially, all of these kids at some point in their past found a door, went through it, and ended up in another world. They spent some time there and for whatever reason got kicked back to our world, and every single one of them is not adjusting well. So the odd numbered books in this series are present day, following those kids at Eleanor West's home for wayward children. But all of the even numbered books follow these kids in their past as they go through their door. So since this is book 6, this is one of those go with the kid as they go through their portal, and we are following our main character of Regan. And Regan she's 10 and she's doing okay until one day her parents sit her down and let her know that she is intersex and what exactly that means for her, especially going forward. And she's 10, and that's a lot of information to take in. And when she is walking along the creek near her house, she finds a doorway, and she ends up going through it only to find herself in the Hooflands. Basically, everything that we think of as mythical creatures that happen to have hooves, they all live here. And so they are just so ecstatic to see Regan, because even though Regan appearing means that something bad is going to happen, it also means that Regan is going to be the one to save them. And then the story goes from there. So first up, let's talk about the world building. And I thought the world building was done really, really well. This is a novella, only 175 pages, but it's really just, Seanan McGuire did this excellent job of using a small amount of well-placed world building facts. Like, we just don't learn a ton about anything, but it all fits well together, and the way that it's presented to us, it's generally the information is given to our main character of Regan as this is how our world works, but she's only 10, so they don't give her all that information because she really honestly doesn't need to know it. And so it feels real, right? It feels like these adults that are kind of trying to shelter a kid because she just doesn't need to know. But we get enough about everything from how the centaurs move their herds to the annual fair that they have. So it just honestly feels real. It feels like this is really a place that we only just get to see this very small slice of as it relates to Regan and what she is doing there. I honestly feel like if we gave Seanan McGuire a whole novel to write about this land, she would easily be able to do so, because it's really a place. So next up, let's talk about the characters. So Regan, like I said, is 10 at the start of this novel. She is honestly very reminiscent of most of the 10-year-olds I've known. A little bit mischievous, a whole lot of naive, but honestly just genuinely overall a good person. She does not have this strong personality, but like a lot of 10-year-olds, your personality just isn't really quite fully set. And so I found all of that to be very realistic. However, I will say that even though I thought she was very realistically a 10-year-old, I also got to the end of the novel and was like, I don't really feel like I truly know her as a character. It was good enough for the story, but it really, I could have personally used more, even as I recognized that this character was well written. Now, Regan's best friend in the Hooflands is Chicory, and she is a centaur, and she is basically just another Regan, right? She's about the same age, so it makes sense that they would be very similar to each other. And then all the other characters really didn't have distinctive personalities. So Regan ends up with this centaur herd, and seriously, I think there were 7 or 8 of them. and they all just blurred together. Like there were some that I knew because, oh, that's the doctor, and this is the one that found Regan when she went through her doorway. But other than that, they all just they're very much the same. Now, I will say that Regan's parents are actually decent parents who are trying their best, which is not the case for every single book in this series. So I did want to highlight it because, like, they're actually good ones instead of just completely terrible parents. So, next, let's talk about the plot. So I know in the description it makes it sound like as soon as Regan goes through this doorway, she is going to go on this great adventure. And that's not actually really what happens. This is really a story about Regan coming to terms with who she is and who she wants to be. So, like this, her going through the Hooflands at 10, what meant that she got to grow up and age and mature away from everybody else, because the particulars of why she happens to be intersex means that she is was going to be very unlikely to go through puberty in the same way that everybody else around her was going to be going through puberty. And so when that exact thing happened in the Hooflands, it didn't matter. And so she was able to, again, grow up and mature away from any kind of societal expectations about what it means to grow up. And she was able to just become very comfortable with herself and who she was, and which I honestly thought was just very, very beautiful to see. Now, because she was able to become very comfortable with herself, because she grew up with this herd who very much prized, being a good person over the package that it came in, and because she ended up loving the Hooflands with all her heart, when it came time to go on this adventure, she ended up coming up with a somewhat unusual solution to her problem, which I also really just ended up adoring. So next, let's talk about the pacing and the writing style. This is a very fast-paced book that is very easy to read. I sat down and read it in a couple of hours. I do think that the writing style in general is a little bit less lyrical than other books in the Wayward Children series, which makes sense. Regan and the Hooflands in general are just far more practical than other dimensions that we have gone to in this series, and so it would make sense that the writing is less lyrical. I also just happened to notice that there were fewer narrative asides in this particular book, because usually the narrative asides are kind of done to help explain or give context or make a point about something, and we just generally didn't really need that in this book. So if you noticed that in previous books and didn't really appreciate it, there are less of them in this particular book. So overall, I ended up just adoring this book. It gave me all the feelings, all the warm, fuzzy feelings. It just made me so happy to read this book. It honestly made me feel how everybody else describes the house in the Cerulean Sea. That's what I got from this book. And so I ended up enjoying it so much and gave it 5 stars. Now, I know some of you may be asking, it's the 6th book in the series, can I read it out of order? And the answer is technically yes. So with all of Seanan McGuire's work, it is always best to start at the beginning and read from the beginning in order, not skipping any books, because everything she writes tends to build on itself just all the time, honestly. And so like small details that you find that are in the first book may crop up again later in the series, and you may be a little lost if you didn't read that first book. However, if you have thought about picking up the Wayward Children series and it's just the first book, the premise of the first book didn't really interest you, this is actually a decent place to start to see if you like the series. You don't need any previous knowledge of the books to be able to read this and enjoy it. I just would recommend that if you do that, you want to continue with the series, you go back and read book 1, because if you try to continue on from this point without having gone back, you will end up very, very confused in the next book. So there you go, you guys. That's all I have. Leave me comments down below. I know that the Wayward Children series is like a darling of booktube, but I have heard very few people talk about this book in particular. So if you are interested in reading it, if you have already read it, come talk to me down in the comments. But that is all I have. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.